Okay, Don, it's 21.1, Changing Ways of Life. So we're going to learn about the ways American society changed in the 1920s. Okay, it's a period of rapid change in America and rapid cultural and societal change, most importantly. So we're going to kind of talk about how there's going to be these conflicts in American life. There's a lot of ways you can kind of divide these conflicts down, but and we'll talk about them. But there really is this real conflict between really cities and rural areas, urban and rural areas. And we'll get into that a little bit more in greater depth. Okay, so the big thing here is this rural-urban divide, right? So in the 1920s, for the first time in American history, more Americans are living in cities and towns than are living in rural areas. Okay, so that basically this is counting of towns bigger than about 2,500 people, which again isn't a big town, but still it's a lot different than kind of a more spread out, smaller rural community. You have more and more people settling into towns and cities and urban areas, and it's going to change the way Americans are really going to live their lives. Right? It's about 51-ish%. So you still have a lot of Americans living in the very kind of more isolated, more rural living conditions, living standards. Right? And you also have a lot of immigration. Right? So 2 million migrants a year for the first 20 years of the 20th century. So you have a lot of people coming in mostly from southern and Eastern Europe, Italy, Russia, kind of Europe, trying to flee the wars, flee the things, and that's really changing one, kind of the religious and demographic makeup of the United States and the cultural makeup of the United States, and also these people are mostly settling in cities, which is causing cities to grow at really an exponential rate. I mean, New York is a city of like 6 million people, 5.5 million people. That's a gigantic city for the time. City living, it has pros and cons, right? So living in the city, one, there's opportunity, right? There's jobs, right? That's where the jobs are. A lot of people are moving out of the country to the cities to get jobs in factories, to get jobs, doing whatever they are trained to do. There's more clerical jobs, more white-collar jobs that are opening up. So it's not just factory and industrial jobs, so that's a big part of it. Cities also offer lots of cultural and entertainment venues. There's baseball. Baseball becomes huge in the 1920s. We have museums, and there's more schools, there's more infrastructure, there's more things people do. People can go to shows, they can go to the movies, they can go to concerts. There's all these kind of cultural activities going on in cities. There's festivals, and cities have a lot happening. Compare downtown Baltimore to Towson or Hereford, right? Like, what is the difference between what goes on in the cities? What are your opportunities, your options on an entertainment level in those different areas? Cities provide that kind of exciting lifestyle. And the challenge of that is, it's way less personal. A lot of migrants, especially from rural areas, are coming to cities, and they're coming from towns of 400 where everyone knows everyone, no one locks the door, right? Everyone's friends, everyone goes to the same church, everyone is, for the most part, if we're talking about the United States, most of these people are white and never really lived around other non-white Anglo-Saxon Protestant people, right? And going to the cities where you have this massive influx of Catholic immigration, you have lots of African Americans coming from the South, it's a much more diverse place, so they're kind of losing some of that cultural connectivity they would have experienced in the kind of country, rural areas. Right? You don't have the same connection with your neighbors, the people in the street, right? You can walk down the street in the city and not see anyone you know, and not say hi to anyone. No one would even really know you were there, as opposed to that small town where everyone knows everyone, right? Rural America does strike back against the cities with the passing of Prohibition, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which bans the sale and manufacture of alcohol. And this is something that is really heavily supported outside of the cities. Right? This is supported by the white, rural, Protestant kind of almost very large plurality of people in the United States that view drinking as a sin, as something that is morally wrong, something that causes problems and laziness and child abuse, spousal abuse, right? And by banning alcohol, they want to get rid of that. Cities kind of see alcohol as a way to relax and unwind and have a good time, right? And a lot of that too comes from the migrants and the immigrants coming in, and where alcohol isn't seen as sinful, right? And a lot of kind of the migrants coming here, especially from Austria-Hungary, especially from Italy, right? Wine and beer and kind of alcohol drinking is a big part of those cultures, and those immigrants still want to do that, right? It's a big cultural thing for them, and when they come to America, it's not allowed. So they really push back against it, and we see people immediately fighting back against this law. H.L. Mencken, who is a great writer, he wrote for the Baltimore Sun, says like the new national sport is trying to evade the law of prohibition, right? People just trying to get away. It's not even criminal anymore. We're just really just playing a big game. The big two things are speakeasies, which are like secret bars, right? Where you have to know someone, or you have to have the passcode, or you have to have some kind of inn. You'd go in there and it'd be a full bar, and that's where people would drink. Mostly middle class, upper middle class people in cities would drink. They call them speakeasies because you have to talk quietly in the bar, because if you were loud and rambunctious, you could get discovered and the police could break up the bar. Bootleggers were what were known as the smugglers, people that were smuggling alcohol in from Canada, from Cuba, from other countries, or kind of smuggling around the country, right? And the term comes from hiding alcohol in the leg of their boot, right? So they're bootleggers. These guys make a lot of money, right? Because there's still a very large demand of alcohol. They'll smuggle it from Canada, they'll put boats out in international water, and people would sail out and get alcohol from them. They'd make it. The government never really funded the kind of efforts to stop prohibition of the Foreigner Act, which was supposed to kind of set up this like task force to stop liquor and stop smugglers, but they never really had enough money or supplies, and it became like really just an impossible job. There were like 1,500 federal agents, used for trying to stop alcohol in this gigantic country. 1,500 people is really not enough, right? So alcohol is still everywhere. You can still get it, and really, like hardware stores would sell stills for distilling alcohol. Really, just like flagrant violation of the law. This is going to lead to organized crime and Al Capone. So these places, especially in big cities, Chicago, New York, right, big city, we've seen Boardwalk Empire, these cities have markets for alcohol, and because there's no legal way to fill that market, organized crime or the mob kind of takes over. Al Capone makes millions and millions and millions of dollars controlling the liquor industry, basically liquor distribution in Chicago. And he's selling lots of booze and alcohol to people. He's also murdering a lot of people, so that's the other part of this. And there's lots of violence, and I'm sure you're all aware of like the Tommy gun, the gangsters gunning down each other. There's some great movies, Untouchables. You ever seen the movie The Untouchables? Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, good film, right? Kind of about this, right? And there's this kind of massive crime wave that kind of comes over American cities, and it's mostly because of these kind of crime bosses fighting each other over control of liquor distribution and selling in certain cities. Okay. The other big clash, and again, this kind of fits in that rural-urban divide, is the science and religion, right? Fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, right? Which means like a very literal interpretation of the Bible is very prevalent among rural Americans, and not just rural Americans, but it's more prevalent among these small-town rural Americans, mostly in the South, mostly in the West, right? These are the same people that are pushing prohibition, kind of seeing this as drinking is sinful, and they're going to kind of set up these rules and laws that are going to try to push this worldview on the country, right? They're very distrustful of science. They're very distrustful of other religions, including Catholicism. Right, and this is going to come to a head in Scopes' monkey trial. John Scopes is a biology teacher who says one thing that's basically maybe evolution happened. He gets arrested almost immediately in the state of Tennessee for breaking the law about teaching the theory of evolution to public school students. You weren't allowed to do it. You had to teach creation because that's what the Bible said. This case becomes a massive national sensation. Clarence Darrow gets hired for the defense. He's going to defend John Scopes. He's one of the top trial lawyers in the entire country. And our man, William Jennings Bryan, who is a devout fundamentalist, also four-time nominee for president, very popular in the South, very popular in the West, where there's lots of fundamentalists, is going to be the special prosecutor, the guy going after Scopes for breaking the law. Jennings Bryan is famously put on the stand by Clarence Darrow, where Darrow eventually gets him to admit that there's other ways to interpret the Bible, basically talking about the creation story, and the whole courtroom goes wild, and they still find Scopes guilty for teaching evolution, because there really wasn't much of a question of whether he did or he didn't. All right, but this big kind of deal about this trial and this episode shows that it's a great illustration of the divide between kind of the rural, conservative, fundamentalist rural population, mostly centered in the South and the West, and kind of a more metropolitan, cosmopolitan city population, the Northeast and Midwest. Right. If you have any other questions, make sure to ask your history teacher. Thanks for watching.